All right, guys, welcome back to the Building Blocks series. This is the series where we talk about what went right, but mostly what went wrong in our first startup, the things we learned, and the principles that we're applying to our business going forward. Today, we get to talk about two things that I think we did really well at my first startup. The first thing that we did really well is we were really audacious. We assumed that every room that we were in, we were supposed to be there. We assumed that every employee that was working for us, their purpose was to be part of our purpose. And that all the good things that were happening to us were because we were doing the right thing. We assumed that the world would give us what we asked for. And because of that, we were able to move into rooms and into situations that a lot of people would have never even tried to get into. I mean, say what you want to, my ex-business partner is one of the most audacious people that I've ever met in my entire life. That ended up being a big blessing for us a lot of times because we would be uncomfortably forward about what we were doing and what we wanted. And a lot of times we would get a lot more than I thought that we were gonna get because of that. So that was a big lesson for me. And honestly, with everything that's went on the last few years, that is something that I've really never appreciated until the last few years, because I've never had a problem putting myself out there. I've never had a problem, asking for things or going after things. And the last few years, I've just carried this huge emotional debt from that failure and started to really realize how important it is not only to do that, but to really believe it in your heart. Because right now, people can just, they know when you don't actually feel that way and when you're putting on a show. The second thing that we did really well at my first startup is we were great storytellers. And what we were just talking about, how people know when you don't actually believe the things you're telling them, they know when you're lying to them about your story. And so it's really important in a startup to tell your story in a really gritty and authentic way. I'm a firm believer that everybody believes in stories. So telling the story of your startup and telling your story inside of that startup and inviting other people to take their story and tie it to your story and be a part of your story is one of the single most important things you can do in a young business. And that first set of people that comes in and ties your story to their story or ties their story to your story, those are your disciples. And then they start talking about it and you do such a good job with them and you do such a good job with telling the business's story that they can't help but make it a huge part of their story. And they start telling people about it. And then they start pulling people in. And then the clients of your business start telling your story. And that's how you catch fire and you organically grow without dropping a ton of money on advertising. It's how organic growth happens, but it only happens when you're truly doing important work, people are truly bought in, and that when you really believe in what you're doing and are telling the story in an authentic way. And we were so good at that. The work we were doing just wasn't important enough to carry that. And we didn't have the building blocks to keep that story going, which is something we're not gonna do this time around. So this time around, we're gonna tell our story in a really raw, gritty, authentic way. We're gonna do something that's really important. And we're gonna do it slowly but surely while putting the right systems in place so that as people come in, they have this amazing experience. And not only do they have an amazing experience with the business, they really feel like they're pushing the mission forward. That's the two things that I think we did really well at my first startup that we can actually take and we can apply to whatever's next. And that's to my life, that's to the business. But these are the two things that, if I had to say these are the two things we did right, that's it. So thanks for coming into the Building Blocks series. There's 2 episodes left. I am really excited to talk to you about those. The next 2 are gonna be what I would say are probably the most important going forward. But it's nice to get into this last third of the episode series where we're talking about things we did right and things we're putting in place for the future. So thanks again. Talk to y'all soon.